So we're having a hustings here. There's a leadership contest in the Green Party. Two very distinctive groups of candidates. Well, there's one individual, one pair of candidates, and we're very lucky to have one of that pair here. This is going to be a hustings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get them to outline their position. I'm going to explore some of the kind of key issues and key divisions, so you kind of map out the territory a bit, and then we want you guys, the voters, to come in and discuss this with them, ask questions, and kind of we'll open it up to the floor. So hopefully we'll come to the floor quite early. So be thinking about what your issues are, what you want to see the Green Party doing, what issues you think it should be engaging, and the way in which it should be presenting itself and engaging with the other parties. There's been this huge change in the kind of political geography of the UK, of which the Greens have been a part. And how does the Green Party see its future? What strategies are going to kind of engage with in order to kind of grow and deliver change in Britain? Those are the issues that we're going to be discussing. But I want to bring on first Ellie Chown. She's come on, whoa, just bringing a bit more dynamism to it. So I'm going to do a very short introduction. So Ellie was a local Green in the local authority. Then he became an MEP. Then she stood at the last election and won with an unbelievable swing. So you can remember the number. The number is 33% swing to the Greens. So a really decisive victory. And this is taking the Green Party from the single MP they had to 4 MPs. So the story that we told was obviously a huge story about the success of the Reform Party, but at the same time it was a triumph for the Green Party as well. So I'm going to keep Zack, our other candidate. You're going to be off just to create a bit of extra drama, Zack. So let's hear from Ellie. You've got 2.5 minutes to make your case. Why, Ellie, should you be leader of the Green Party of the UK?
Thank you, Justin. Thanks, everybody, so much for being here. I'm hugely excited about this moment in the Green Party's history, and I'm not going to do a speech kind of telling you how bad things are and what a disaster this climate is and social justice is, because you know that and you're passionate about it. The reason I'm standing to be leader of the Green Party is because I know the Green Party has such a huge and important and exciting role to play in tackling those things that we are anxious about, that we're fearful about, that we want to change, channeling that anger and frustration into hope, into action that wins elections. Because the Green Party is the most successful it has ever been. We have huge momentum. The last 8 years running, we've won more and more and more local councillors. We've doubled our councillor numbers. We've quadrupled our number of MPs. And that's because we know how to win elections. And we showed that in North Herefordshire. How do we win elections? We win them by building a huge team. We win them together. We win them by bringing people together. The politics of inclusion, not the politics of polarization. We win by making the things that we care about and are passionate about connect with the things that people are frustrated about and angry about and want to change. We do that by speaking out, not preaching to the choir, but by reaching out, by going and having conversations, because it's those conversations that change people's minds. We do it by building a huge momentum of people coming together. My campaign was won with 400 volunteers. They weren't even all members of the Green Party, but they were hugely excited about the potential for change. And that's what Adrian and I want to make happen across the country. We know how to do it. We know how to win first past the post elections. We want to change the system. We want a proportional system so that every single vote counts equally. But in order to get there, we have to win in the first past the post system, and we've done that multiple times locally and nationally. We want to build the candidates, grow the candidates, support the teams, boost our communications in order to be able to do that across the nation. And in order to do that, we passionately believe the Green Party has to be led from Westminster, because we're there every day on the biggest political platform in the country, speaking out on genocide, on wealth tax, speaking out on environmental protection, nature, tackling the climate crisis. We have that platform, we have that passion. And for the credibility and the growth of the Green Party to win those elections, we need to be led from Westminster. Thank you.
Ellie, thank you very much. Big round of applause for Ellie, please. So that is, if you like, that is the incumbent position. Successful party doing well, more of the same, really. And I think Zack, let me bring up now Zack Polanski.
Shall I sit down?
Yeah, sit down for Zack. Yeah, go on, and then we might stand up again. Yeah, so Zack is the challenger. Zack is an assembly member in London. You're head of the fire committee, but you're also deputy leader of the Greens. Zack has a different approach. He wants to, at the moment, there are 2 co-leaders of the Green Party. Zack would prefer there to be 1 leader, and Zack would also like that leader to be him. And he will now explain his policies, but he's got, anyway, look, let me hand it over to you. So Zack, you've got your 2.5 minutes now starting. Wait for it. No, go. Now.
Thank you. There's a nature and climate emergency. It is not some distant threat. It is here and it is now, both around the world, but right here on our doorsteps. Floods, wildfires, and those who have done the least to cause the climate crisis are the ones who will be hit the hardest. The number 1 problem facing us in this country and around the world is inequality. We need to focus on inequality in every single communication we make as a Green Party. We need to cut through, not just to millions of people who already agree, but to millions of people more. We need a mass movement. And what we really need is bold leadership now. And I'll break that down. Bold. To be really clear about what we stand for and what we really stand against. No equivocating, no prevaricating. We call a genocide. We make sure that we center working class voices and the precariat, people running small businesses, and we take this fight to the Labour government. Yes, reform are an issue, the far right is an issue, but let's be very clear, centrism and Keir Starmer is a lot of what is driving the inequality in this country and pushing people into the hands of reform. We cannot be disappointed by this government. We cannot be concerned about this government. We need to be angry about this government and yes, turn that anger into hope and to tangible action that will change people's lives. That's for bold. Leadership. I'm obviously talking about my leadership, but I'm talking about every single person's leadership. Leadership does not come from the top of the party. We don't believe that in the Green Party, nor does it come from 4 MPs that I worked really hard, along with thousands of members, to get them elected, and I am so proud that they are there. But leadership comes from communities. It comes from the people every day in the synagogues, the mosques, the churches, the non-faith spaces, the community spaces. I'm so excited that the next group of MPs, the future Green MPs, might not even be members yet. They're the people that, as I've been touring constantly around England and Wales for the last few years as deputy leader, I have met those people. I have met those marginalised communities who say politics in Westminster feels so different, feels so broken, and actually the real work starts in communities. And that, by the way, is exactly how we get so many more Green MPs elected next time, because it is important to win power, but you win power from the community, not from focusing just on Westminster. And when I say now, this is obvious. I'm not talking about the next general election. I'm not even talking about the leadership election. I'm talking about right now. If you're a Green Party member, great. If you're not, join by July 31st, you get a vote in this election. But not just this room. Go talk to your friends, neighbours, colleagues, strangers. Tell them if they're worried about the climate crisis, they're worried about inequality, they're worried about the racist riots we had on our streets last summer, that it's time to join the Green Party because it's time for bold leadership. Thank you.
Okay, round of applause, please, for Zack. So like I say, what we'll do now, I'll kind of host a little discussion between the 2 candidates, and then it's over to you. Zack, stand up again, Zack, because I want to ask you.
It's like a game.
We have literally had, this has been the most successful election the Green Party has ever had. And I quoted the biggest margin, the biggest swing, which was in North Herefordshire, but elsewhere there were equally huge swings. Zack, what is that telling you about the success of the current leadership? And why do you think you can do better?
Well, it's telling me that I'm in the current leadership team, and I've been really, really proud to be there as we've won record councillors, record members. And I've done more media interviews since I launched this leadership campaign, over 50 national broadcasts. And I think that says when we've got something interesting to say, when we're really clear about what we stand for, the media is broken. We can talk about that another time, Justin. But we need media reform. But alongside that, we need people who can speak clearly and communicate in a way that excites people and inspires people. It also tells me there's 40 seats where Greens came second place to an increasingly unpopular Labour government. 20 of those are in London. I'm a London Assembly member. Just last night, we won in Greenwich. For the first time ever, we took a seat from the Labour Party. But it also tells me it's not just about those seats where we're facing Labour. Ellie is absolutely right. She won an incredible swing, and she has demonstrated there is nowhere that we can't win when we resource. But we won 4 seats because we ran a highly targeted campaign on 4 seats where we didn't have the air campaign, the national broadcast campaign we needed. Just imagine what we're going to do when we have that national campaign, when we also target, but we make sure we're not going for a small number of seats, as amazing as it was, but we're going for that mass movement to hold the balance of power and take this fight to the Labour government.
Okay. Ellie? So I'll just ask... well, a little bit, because
it's just like being in Parliament, where we pop up and down all the time.
So I want you to respond to that. And, I mean, he makes a powerful case of single voice. Essentially, what he's saying is that you're not delivering that clear national voice that he believes the Green Party should have.
Well, I hope Zack isn't saying that, because if you look at what we're doing in Parliament, we absolutely are speaking truth to power. We're using that platform. I've spoken on genocide in Gaza practically every week since I have been in Parliament. I've done, I think, 150, something like that, times that I have spoken in Parliament. We are absolutely using that platform. It is a team effort to get people elected. And actually, that is central to the pitch that Adrian and I are making. We've got this strapline, Together We Win, because that is central to our identity. It's central to our understanding of how we win. The party has demonstrated that over years. Adrian literally wrote the book on it. He literally wrote the campaigning Bible, the Target to Win manual for the party, which is how we have managed to focus our efforts and win. And I know from my personal experience of winning votes from across the whole political spectrum in my area, that we need to speak in a way that people can connect with, that we need to be trusted by them. I absolutely believe the Green Party can and must and will do that across the country. We've got that experience of doing it. We've done it so successfully under Adrian and Carla's leadership. This is not a broken campaign model. This is a model that's led us to the most successful point ever as a party. Now it's about scaling up. And I know about scaling up because in my constituency, 3 years before the election, there was a tiny number of us who believed it was doable. A year beforehand, there was still only about half a dozen of us who believed it was doable. We sat down and thought, how are we going to do this? We need 400 volunteers, 20 volunteers in 20 different teams across an incredibly huge geographical area. And we did it by word of mouth. We reached out. We generated the energy and the commitment and the campaigning oomph from across the whole community. We generated the money. We raised £100,000 in a year for this campaign. That is how we are going to win in those other seats around the country. It's not just about broadcast, it's about connection and conversation.
Another aspect of the strategy has been building an electoral base in local authorities.
Yeah.
And then, so just explain how that's worked.
Yeah, so I was a local councillor, as you said, before I was elected as an MP in an authority in which we first had 1 councillor and then 3 and then 4 and then 7 and now 9. And we spent 4 years working in coalition with independents to run that local authority. And it was after that experience that we then elected a Green MP. So it's building up from the grassroots. And I pay huge tribute to everyone who's been elected as a councillor, who's ever stood as a councillor, who's supported a campaign, because it's a team effort. This is how we build the party, from the grassroots up, by mobilising and energising as many people as possible, and by showing that when we are elected, we do an amazing job. We flipping well work our socks off for people to address their concerns locally, and that's how we win their trust. By doing stuff on planning and potholes in my local council, that is how I won the kind of public support to be able to do really radical things. We cancelled a huge multi-million-pound bypass proposal. We ran the first Citizens Climate Assembly in our council, put millions of pounds into actions following up on that. It's through that service and that connection with local people that you win the political space for the changes that we've got to make happen as the Green Party.
So, Zack, that, as we've said, that's been a really successful strategy for the Greens, and it sounds like you want it. I mean, it sounds like a lot of. We'll come on to policy differences next, But it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is about strategy and about changing the approach and the presentation and the strategy for the Green Party. Why, again, respond to this building from the ground up?
I think there's a few things. The first thing to be really clear about is the MPs are doing a phenomenal job. They are working their socks off. So none of this contest is a criticism of the MPs. I also think we should listen to Carla Denyer very carefully. She stepped down as co-leader because she said she wanted to focus on being a really good constituency MP. And actually, the Green Party have always had our best elections when the leader is not an MP. Those are our record results. And actually, the only time when we went down a little bit was when we had an MP as a leader. Now, this is not a slight at Caroline Lucas. That would be a very brave move to make. But the point there is that being an MP is a very different job in a small party to being the movement builder, to being the person who goes around the country. Because absolutely, we need to build a team. And I want to see the Green Party be the biggest team you can possibly imagine. And we can't do that if the team is restricted to being in Westminster. On the point about local politics, I also think the benefits of local politics are incredibly important. I've been elected longer than many of the MPs in terms of national politics. I have passed a climate emergency motion bill at the London Assembly. I got Sadiq Khan to U-turn on aviation expansion. There is loads that can happen at the regional level and the local level. But I also know that in the year that we've had MPs in Parliament, I have done a lot of the travelling around the country to go visit those local parties. Again, it is not a criticism of the MPs. They've been where they should in Parliament and in their constituency. As deputy leader, I've been in those movements. I've been having those meetings. I've been growing the party. I just want to continue to do it now by taking a step up as your next leader.
So, Ellie, do you want to respond to that? Because that is a very specific, the leader should not be one of the MPs.
Yeah, I disagree. And this is perhaps one of the key dividing lines between Zack and I as rivals for the leadership of the party. There's no other political party that takes that position. Being an MP means we are on the biggest political platform in the country. It gives us access day in, day out to the journalists that are there in the Commons with us. It gives us the opportunity to speak day in, day out on the issues that are at the top of the political agenda. I am hugely grateful to everybody in the party who's been such passionate campaigners going out and growing the movement. There's actually no contradiction between being an MP and being a campaigner elsewhere. On the day before the local elections, I was campaigning in Worcester. I'd been out in Staffordshire. I've supported campaigns across my region. But what's really important is that we maximise our use of this opportunity. And having grown the party to 4 MPs, 2 of whom are absolutely confident that we can cope with being a good constituency MP and being a leader, because those things are mutually compatible. The media work, the promotion of what we're doing. And in fact, for my constituents, many of them have said to me, they're really chuffed that I'm standing for the leadership because it puts my area on the map as well. You wouldn't say to any of the other political leaders, oh, why don't you step down and let somebody else from within the party lead it? We have 4 MPs now. 2 of us want to use that platform to lead the party because we know that that is how we will be able to grow the party most effectively. And we will still absolutely want to use all of the energies of everybody within the party to go out and mobilise elsewhere. But let's use this platform now that we've won it.
Stay up because I'm going to come back to you. So there's a couple more issues for me. I think we need to explore policy differences a bit. And it was quite interesting, wasn't it? In the opening statements they made were very different. Zack's really emphasising inequality. He's emphasising taking the battle to Labour. And I just wonder, how would you define the policy differences between you and Zack?
Look, we're both members of the same party. We both have fundamentally the same beliefs. I suppose my pitch is that the party isn't broken. We know what to do. We need to do it even better. And we do that by leading from Westminster. I think it would be a real kind of bit of misinformation to somehow characterise our leadership bid, Adrian and myself, will characterise us as people who don't talk about inequality and social justice. I've just been serving on the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. I wasn't just banging on about nature. I was banging on about targets for social housing, because that is the housing crisis that we face. I've been banging on about wealth tax and criticising the government for taking money from the disabled people rather than from where they should be taking it from, those with huge assets who should be sharing a bit more of the social burden. We have got a fantastic array of policies as the Green Party on social justice, on environmental justice, on economic justice. I've been campaigning on these issues literally since I was a teenager, since I was out on the streets campaigning and the anti-apartheid movement, since I was getting arrested for blockading arms fairs in my 20s. This is absolutely central to my identity. I've spent 20 plus years working in the field of social justice, working in international social justice on health and education. This is central to mine and to Adrian's identity. It's not a fundamental policy difference, I don't think, between us. It's saying that we know how to win elections. We need to build on that momentum we've got, and we need to use the platform of Westminster to maximise our cut through.
Okay, so Ellie's saying there aren't fundamental differences, but there is a difference in emphasis. When you read about Zack, you'll hear about this eco-populism that he talks about. So what is this? What is eco-populism? And, and how do you think your approach to the issues would be different?
Yeah, so to respond to some of that, I think, first of all, the idea that the MPs can get media, but I can't, is an odd emphasis when you look at how much national media I've had recently. I'd encourage anyone to go to backzack.com, and there's a ton of media that I've been doing. Just in the last week, I've spoken at Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament against Israel's illegal invasion, or illegal bombing, of Iraq. I've spoken at Stop the War Coalition movement.
Iran.
I've spoken with Iran. I've spoken with Jeremy Corbyn just last week at We Demand Change in Bristol. And I think it's important that we are in these spaces. In terms of eco-populism, this is about emphasis, exactly that. The nature and climate crisis is deeply important. That's why it's the first thing I spoke about. But I think we also need to recognize when people are absolutely desperate, when they're struggling to put food on the table, heat in their homes, hold down a job, or even get to work, the nature and climate crisis is not the first thing they're thinking about. Doesn't mean they care about it. I sometimes hear that, and I think that's deeply patronizing to working class people. But it does mean they're just trying to get through the day. I think as a political party, whenever we communicate, we need to go to where people exactly are, rather than expecting them to come to us. So I suppose my emphasis is about, again, not being in Westminster, not focusing on the 4 MPs, because actually if I'm leader, and by the way, the SNP do have a different model, also parties have a parliamentary leader, so there's nothing to stop the Green Party having me as the leader of a movement and an MP as the leader in Parliament, effectively being co-leaders of the Green Party in terms of when we speak to the media. But yeah, the SNP do it, and also if I'm leader, it means we get 2 deputy leaders. So the choice here is either to keep platforming the same 4 people who are MPs who already have national platform, or to leave the 4 MPs with the same national platform and extend our national platform to a new national leader and 2 deputy leaders. The smart choice, it seems to me, is to open our platform, to broaden our reach and grow our team.
Do you want to respond to that? I can move on. Because I was going to, one of the divisive issues that's been recently, and then we will throw it open, is the issue of sort of gender and the approach to gender within the Green Party. And it's been a very sensitive issue. I'm going to come to you first, Ellie. And there was a Green women's group that was kicked out for expressing gender-critical views. And I'd like to know your view on that and what your position is on gender-critical issues. Is a trans woman a woman?
Thank you. The Green Party is a trans-inclusive party. It has a hugely important and positive history of being a trans-inclusive party, and I'm very proud of that. And if we look at what's happened recently with the Supreme Court judgment and the EHRC's interim guidance beyond that, while there's clearly, sex and gender are 2 different things, right? But the Supreme Court judgment, in clarifying a bit of the law, and particularly the EHRC guidance, has created a whole zone of lack of clarity, of uncertainty and anxiety and fear and frustration for trans people. And I've got trans friends, constituents, colleagues, family members. Trans constituents have come to me and shared their huge anxiety about the implications of those of that ruling, and it is ridiculous that somebody, a trans man friend who has lived as a trans man for many years, is now not able to go in the toilets they've used for decades. A trans woman constituent, likewise, the same thing. So we clearly have work to do, I think, as legislators and the EHRC as well, to clarify that and to ensure that trans people's voices are heard within that.
So
at the same time, just to, on the issues within the party, it shouldn't be controversial to say that sex and gender are different. And we need to be a party that is an inclusive party, that is able to hear different views, that is able to have conversations about difficult issues or where there are differences of opinion, whether that's on HS2 or nuclear or sex and gender or a whole range of other things. We need to be a party where it's possible to have conversations and listen to each other and find the things where we have in common and understand where there are differences. And that's actually central to my politics. My politics is the complete opposite of polarization. It's why I believe in a proportional system, because I want us to work within a political system where we have to sit down, talk to people with different views and reach a common perspective where there is common ground.
So is a trans man a man?
Socially, absolutely.
Socially.
Yes. Biologically, not necessarily. And it depends on which, it depends. So there are several different ways in which a person transitions. Maybe hormone therapy, maybe surgery, or maybe socially. So if a constituent came to me, for example, and I think it's important to root this in real trans people's experiences. And I've had this conversation with a trans woman constituent, and I've spoken about this exact question with her, and the question of socially and biologically a woman. And she considers herself to be biologically a woman as well as socially. She's had hormone therapy, she's had surgery and so forth. And she wasn't born biologically a woman, but she has had huge amounts of a journey in transitioning. And I absolutely respect that for her. So I think in a way, we have to be a bit more non-binary in our conversations about these issues.
Okay, let's just one last question for you. But you must have been on the committee that made the decision about the Green Women's Group that was expelled.
No.
You weren't?
No.
Would you reinstate them?
I honestly don't know the details of the case. I really don't. No, genuine. No, seriously.
I mean, they got that. Look,
I honestly don't.
There are people in the audience who will know the details of the case. My understanding is that they were expelled on a technicality because the leadership election was a bit late for the committee. But actually, there was a big division over their gender-critical views. So they'd expressed opinions which, frankly, are quite similar to yours, that sex and gender are different. And that was considered.
I mean, that's a legally protected belief that sex and gender are different, and it is totally compatible with trans inclusivity and respect for trans people's rights. I'm absolutely clear about that. On the specific case, I honestly don't know the details, and the reason is because I've spent my whole time in the Green Party focusing on reaching out to win people over to vote Green, focusing on that outreach, those conversations with people in our communities. And I think I would like the Green Party to spend more of our energy on that outreach, on winning people over, on speaking to voters, on connecting with the real issues that affect people's lives. For trans people, for trans women and men in my constituency, I absolutely am listening to them. I absolutely am representing them. And there are so many additional issues that we need to be connecting with people with. And that is why a focus on winning elections is so central to the Green Party.
Okay, brilliant. So, Zack, do you want to tell us what your position is? Is a trans man a man? And discuss where you stand on the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd start off by saying I don't think it's contentious to say that sex and gender are different things. And the trans people I know also say that. So I don't think that's the conversation here. But I also don't think it's contentious to say a trans man is a man, a trans woman is woman, and non-binary identities are valid. And I say that as a gay man who grew up under Section 28. And I've experienced for myself the ramifications of when a right-wing media demonize a small marginalized group. Now, that doesn't mean people cannot have conversations. It doesn't mean that there aren't free speech. But for instance, there are boundaries. So we're a broad church party, but even broad churches have walls. And a party does not need to be everything for everyone. So for instance, where is the wall for me? If you are not willing to respect someone's gender in terms of getting their pronouns right, anyone can make a mistake, including myself. But if you repeatedly, as I've seen happen, repeatedly get someone's gender wrong, I think that's malicious and harassment, and I don't think belongs in the Green Party.
I mean, it sounds a bit to me, you're saying, you know, sex and gender are different, but a trans man is a man. I mean, you're having your cake and eating it, aren't you?
I don't think so at all. I think that's recognizing that when someone's born, there is a biological difference, but the point they wish to self-identify, it's respecting that self-identification process to say you are who you say you are, what business is it of mine where you pee, and let's make sure that everyone's safety. And when we talk about women's safety, incredibly important. But again, I quote Carla Denyer, she was brilliant on this on Newsnight. Women are worried about getting gynecology appointments. Women are worried about the gender pay gap. Let's focus on the issues that actually matter to women and make sure we're listening to women, yes, because free speech is important, but let's not be distracted by the far right who have used this to divide the left.
Right, so we both now we'll open this up to the floor. I'm sure there are loads of questions. We'll go to you first. I think your hand was up first.
So basically, I was in the left field stage earlier on, and I heard most depressing sentiments basically about the Green Party, where people who consider themselves to be working class just don't click with the Greens. What will you do to...
Who was saying that, just out of interest?
An audience member.
An
audience member, and a lot of people applauded that. I'm Green myself. What will you do to win working class votes away from Labour and bring backbench MPs like Abbott and Corbyn and Sultana into the fold?
Do you want to go first, Ellie?
Thanks. Yeah, it's a really good question. And this question actually came up in a panel that I was on earlier about climate change. And one of the themes in that discussion, one of the things that I contributed was that my experience is that people want to hear from people who are like them. So I think absolutely we in the Green Party and the Green movement more broadly needs to have many more diverse voices, and we need to bring them up. We need those explicit kind of support programs and mechanisms to bring a wider range of voices into the party. And actually, the way we do that is by being as inclusive as possible, by not making people feel that they have to be, you know, sometimes I've spoken to people who've said, I do a lot of trying to encourage people to get involved in the Green Party, to consider standing for elections. And sometimes they're like, oh my God, I don't want to put my head above the parapet because what if I get shot down because, you know, I occasionally eat a burger or something like that. So there's a risk that the Green movement sometimes has of potentially putting up barriers around inclusion by creating an impression of polarization when we should be connecting with as wide a group of people as possible. We need to be not judging individuals for their personal choices, but provide, you know, connecting with the common ground around challenging the total unfairness of the system that we have at the moment. And there are so many aspects of green policy that are absolutely about that, not just taxation policy, but policy on transport, for example. I mean, I've got a very kind of specific example. When I was a councillor and cabinet member in Herefordshire, post-COVID, we had £1 million to spend on transport to support the recovery. The officers said, well, let's use it for free parking. And I said, why would we do that? That's totally incompatible, not just with our environmental ambitions, but it's also totally inequitable, because in the poorest areas of our council area, more than 50% of the households have no access to a private car. And so that is an example of the way that social justice concerns absolutely connect with environmental justice concerns and are translated on a day-to-day basis by elected Greens. So for me, the key answer to that is our programme for growing those candidates and supporting the teams around them to stand in the local and the next general elections. That's how we reach out more widely.
Zack? space family.
Everything Ellie just said, conveniently, plus. I think this is why I talk about eco-populism, because I talk about meeting people at the needs where they are. This is both the ethically right thing to do for some of the people who have been left behind by decades of generations of politics, but it's also the smart electoral thing to do. Working class communities are often the biggest communities and the biggest mass of people. I also think, though, it's creating a coalition between working class communities and what Guy Standing calls the precariat. People who are just 1 month away from losing their house or not being able to eat, people running small businesses, for instance. And I think ultimately it is about the 99% versus the 1%. And so this isn't about dumping social justice issues. It's not about finding it too hard to defend migrants, the disabled, or trans people. We absolutely must do that at the centre and front of every programme. And at the same time recognise that the threat is not coming by dinghy. The threat is flying above our head by private jets. The threat is unscrupulous landlords. The threat is fossil fuel barons. The threat is multimillionaires and billionaires. And I think when we're very clear about that, that speaks in a language and in a way that can create connection. And just last month, I held a People's Assembly. So I invited lots of people, whether they're in the Green Party or not, to come together and for them to set the agenda. Rather than me in a top-down way saying, these are the things I want to talk about, what do you want to talk about? And people went into different rooms to have these conversations. I think we need to be really clear to the likes of Sultana, Abbott, Corbyn, that anyone who shares our values, whether they're a member of another party or an MP of another party, if they share our values, let's stop messing around setting up new parties. Ultimately, fascism is on the rise, the far right is on the rise. The best thing those people could do is for us to welcome them and say, join the Green Party.
Cool. I'm gonna follow that up, and then I will come to you guys, because one of the anxieties some people have about you, Zack, is that you are wanting to draw in the left wing of the Labour Party into the Green movement and create something a bit different from what it's been in the past. And obviously, some people want this, but not everybody wants that. How would you respond to the criticism that actually you're a kind of left-wing Labourite who's a bit concerned about the environment?
Well, I think, to quote Ellie before, we've got to not preach to the choir. And so I don't want to speak to a small choir. I want to grow the choir. I want to be a mass member movement. And that's not just about people on the left of Labour. That is people who might be thinking about voting reform. That is people who voted Lib Dem, Tories.
But that isn't your focus. You specifically said that's not your focus.
Well, I was asking a question about
you
working class
specifically
communities.
said you wanted to take the fight to Labour.
Well, that's for sure. But I think all of those people want to take the fight to the government because that's why they voted for another party right now. And by the way, I'm someone who was in the Liberal Democrats. I've done this journey. I want to see other people do this journey because I've been in the Green Party and I've seen the difference it can make, yes, to working class communities, but frankly, to everyone in this country who needs a livable planet. We need a Green Party.
I'm going to go to the guy with the black t-shirt over there.
I've just been from Law, did a secret set earlier, and she sang Green Light in recognition of Greenwich victory overnight or this morning. That was very good of her. She might be a New Zealand Green, I don't know. But I just want to say it's been fantastic. Thank you for chairing this. What a great idea to have a Hustings, because there's a few more to come, I think. So I'll be online watching those come in. But I would just like to say, I think that the emphasis on the power being in MPs in Parliament is actually a bit off-putting. I'm a Green Party member. I actually have seen a year of a missed opportunity in the Green Party. A year ago, I sat in this tent 3 days before the election, and the promise of 4 MPs hasn't quite been realised. And that's why I believe it's Zack's turn now, with 2 deputy leaders yet to be. Obviously, there's a big mix. But it's only really been Zack's campaign that's galvanised the MPs, and some of the messaging's picked up. But in my view, and Owen Jones and many commentators, there was justified criticism of the lack of kick-on in the Green Party.
Okay.
So it's Zack's turn in my view.
Okay, so I'm not going to go to you, Zack. I'm just going to go to Ellie. Come on.
I've got a question.
Yeah, no, I know. No, she's got to let her reply first.
Thanks. I mean, I would completely, I just simply disagree with you that in some ways Zack's campaign has galvanised the MPs. I've been unbelievably active as an MP right from the start. All you have to do is look at my socials, and the issues that I've been speaking about in the last month are the same issues that I have been speaking about month after month after month since being elected. Sorry, I'll just finish on this. I think as a party, and I'd like to pick up on a point that Zack was making earlier, we absolutely have to communicate the fact that it's the 1% that are causing a huge the majority of the problems. And that's why green policies like frequent flyer levy and so on are so important. But my own experience, I've been an activist for 35 years. I've been a politician or involved in politics for 10 years. And the lesson that I have learned from being involved in politics is that inclusion is more powerful than polarization. And so connecting with people, a wide range of people from all sorts of different voting backgrounds, is how we will win elections. And that is how we will grow our strength. I'm not standing for the leadership because I'm obsessed with Westminster. If you look at the second ever speech that I made in Parliament, it was all about what was wrong with it, and it went completely viral. I have huge criticisms of the way that Parliament works. What I want to do is put my energy, my commitment, and the position that I am honoured and privileged to have been elected to at the service of the party.
I want to get some more questions in because I've let the women in the audience down, haven't I? So,
Yeah, sorry, everyone lets us down, but not taken personally. Actually, my question's linked to being a woman. For context, I know Zack relatively well. We danced one night after conference, and I think you're bloody amazing. These are both two incredible, deeply passionate people. Kind of would like to see you running together, but here we go. For context, so I'm Laura. I stood in the general election last year. I got 24% in Hackney. Yeah, little mic drop. And I want to be sat with you, potentially both in the future. No, I'm getting there. So my question is, particularly as a woman and as a single mother and as a local party member who not only has to campaign running for council, but is also trying to do fundraising, and as a single mother that if I win a council seat, I'm expected to give some of my money to the local party. All these topical questions are really interesting about what's going on in the world, but boringly, money talks. We're in a broken system, but we can't change that system until we overthrow it. How are you going to get money into the Green Party so that I can focus on being a councillor, being a mother, and our local party has the funds to actually win? Because at the moment, we're not seeing any money.
Zack?
First of all, totally want to agree with the premise of the question. Far too many people are priced out of politics, and that's totally unacceptable. The side answer to this, but it's not the real answer, is we need to change the entire political system to make sure that everyone can afford to be involved in politics. But I appreciate that's not an answer to the question you're asking. I think it relates back to our communications. We don't, as you know, accept donations from multimillionaires and billionaires or corporate companies, and that absolutely has to stay. We accept donations from small individuals where we don't have vested interests. Our only vested interests in the Green Party are people and the planet, and it must absolutely stay like that. However, if we don't break through in terms of our media communications, enough people don't know about the Green Party. So it all relates back to the reason we have to be bold. We have to be really clear about what our positions are on things and what we stand against. And I think when we do that, we get more media airtime. That means more communities know about us. We can communicate more in those communities. We see more women and people from marginalised communities step up forward to be the future candidates, and that's the exact way we invest in making sure that the party grows. The model we have at the moment, which has been fine, it's been solid, and I'm really glad that we've won some MPs, isn't going to work in terms of it's not replicable in the way we're working at the moment unless we want to win just a handful of MPs. And I think with all the problems facing us right now, just a handful of MPs, as good as they are, is not going to cut it. We need to win big, think big, and raise big.
I disagree with the suggestion that the model is broken. There's a couple of things I want to say. First of all, you have made an absolutely vital point there. There's got to be the support. Two things quickly in response to that. Number one is that we do need to raise more money, and that does mean more big donations as well as small ones. We're fighting in a system that's incredibly stacked against us. The union money for Labour, the big donors for the Tories, and now all of the dodgy money going into reform. We need to convince people to fund us, and that does mean that we have to be a professional party. I have heard some people say, oh, we mustn't, be a professional party. We absolutely have to be a professional party. We have to be professional at managing ourselves. We have to be professional at our comms. We have to step up, absolutely. And it's like anything, it's a virtuous circle, right? But we do need to convince people to trust us with their money because we are the way that change will be won. But the second thing on the local campaign, My campaign, when I started, I had a part-time campaign manager for the local area, which had got off the ground a few years earlier because we had fundraised locally for it. Like I said, we went from pretty much 0 to 100,000 within a year because we mobilized people. We got people energized. We got the oomph around it. And that is through targeting. We've got to be realistic. At the next general election, we can't do that everywhere, but we should be doing it in many, many, many more places based on our understanding of how brilliantly we've done in places like Hackney previously. But the money comes in from the people who support the Green Party nationwide by having that focus. It's having the focus and the sense of momentum, and it becomes a snowball. I've seen it so many times. I've seen it in local elections. I've seen it precisely in the general elections. That is what we have to replicate, because we're not going to get a landslide of hundreds of MPs at the next general election, I don't think, unless something really radical changes. But what we can do is get many, many more so that we can hold the balance of power and change the direction of politics for good in this country.
I'm going to go to a question right at the back. Lady in the black shirt.
Thank you, Justin. Hello. It's mainly a question for Zack. I am a North Sea oil and gas campaigner, and I have... so this is about your taking the fight to Labour, and really how movement generous you are, because I've heard Green politicians talk about how this government's awful and it's going to approve the Rosebank oil field and stuff like that, and that is not true. It's not... I can see why politically it's advantageous for you to slag off this government and say they're shit on this and they are rubbish on a lot of things, but they are banning new oil licensing in the North Sea, and it's an open question as what they'll do over Rosebank. So will you be movement generous, and will you join the fight with us? And particularly when it comes to fighting Farage, because Farage is leading the polls at the moment, and he is drill, baby, drill. So in terms of actually tackling the root cause of climate change and the oil and gas industry, the threat is coming from Nigel Farage, not from this government. Secondly, just quickly, I'll just tack on to the end of that. You say you've done a lot of media. I'm just curious to know how the right-wing press are dealing with you, how warm they are towards you, and do they give you a fairer ride than Ed, Eco Nutter, Miliband?
So let's start...
Yeah, so I disagree with the premise of the question, which is a good start. But I will absolutely join you to stop Rosebank. I'll absolutely join you to prevent or stop any oil and gas field, because we need to leave fossil fuels where they belong, which is in the ground. Thank you. However...
That wasn't her point, but yeah.
Well, I just don't trust this Labour government, and I think we need to wait to see what happens on Rosebank. They plotted £28 billion for green investment before the general election. Before they'd even won, they threw that out the door. We know that nationalising our energy companies can reduce bills, vital for to stop the far right, to tackle inequality. Those are absolutely things we can do. We've got GB Energy, but it's still looking like that's a shift from public money to private capital. I am absolutely willing to work with Ed Miliband. I'm willing to work with anybody who wants to ultimately stop the climate and nature emergency. But we also need to be really clear. This is a Labour government that won't say no to aviation expansion. Their own Committee on Climate Change says this is not compatible with net zero. You are right, Reform, 95% of their donations have come from oil and gas companies. That's £2.3 million. That's a real issue, and it's gone up, thank you. In terms of, yes, Reform are not our friends here either. But I think if we assume that this Labour government are doing anything that's particularly healthy, sorry, that's not true. They are doing good things on the climate emergency, but they're not enough. And as I say often to Sadiq Khan, a gold star does not stop the climate emergency. We need to do what is necessary, not just what is basic. And I think to call this Labour government basic is me being slightly generous.
Yeah, I think you should come back on this one as well.
Thank you. I already am part of your campaigning against Rosebank. I already have been calling for not just no new oil licenses, but also no consenting of the licenses that have already been given. Thank you. Several months ago, I was able to have a right go at Ed Miliband, specifically about airport expansion, because I sit on the Environmental Audit Committee. There are so many things that the government should be doing better. I think I said this morning, great that they're doing stuff on renewable energy, but what about energy demand? Where is the regulations on the new housing that Angela Rayner is supposed to be building? I've been calling for zero carbon regulations for those homes, for sorting out embodied carbon, for insulating all of the homes across the country. And that is what the power of government is about. That is why we have to win more MPs. And those are the sorts of policies that will bring people together with us, because those aren't policies that are just about the climate. They're policies about tackling people's bills, keeping people out of mouldy homes and new jobs.
And I'm being told we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I want this to be really quick. Quick question, no essays.
Hi there, how are you? For the past 10 years, I've been a member of An Comhaontas Glas, the Green Party of Ireland. In that period, we've seen the party go from no members of Dáil Éireann to opposition, to government, and back to opposition most recently. My question for you is, where do you see the Green Party after the next general election? Looking at the state of UK politics, looking at the state of UK polls, I think it's very realistic. You could see a situation where Labour collapses, but between yous, the Lib Dems and Labour, there's a possible coalition government there. The fights that you are having now, possibly, where you're talking about elections, we want to get MPs, we want to get results. There seems to be disagreements here about things like transphobia, HS2, nuclear power. If those disagreements come to being... So I'm just, from my
Just
perspective...
keep it quick, though.
Your fights, if that position comes up, your fights don't want to be with yourselves.
Yeah,
If you
that's
become
a
a
good
big
point.
party...
That's a good
How
point.
do
So,
you-
yeah, that's okay. You've got it. You're fighting with each other. I mean, you
So I want to be really clear. I don't think we're fighting with each other. We're rivals for the leadership. And that's a normal process in any political party. And it's really important. And I think what you have heard today is we're not arguing about trans rights. We're not arguing about HS2 or nuclear or anything like that. We are just talking about how we feel we can best tackle that threat from reform. I was on a radio program just earlier this week where they were saying, what do you think is going to happen in 4 years' time? And I made the point, anything can change in 4 years. And what we need to be doing is trying to shape what happens there.
Yeah, that's a good question. What is the post the next election? Yeah. So what will and very quickly now,
Yeah.
what would you two achieve? What is your ambition for the Green Party? Where will you be?
A greener and fairer country. What I want to achieve, there would be, if we were in government, in a coalition government, I think there are some clear kind of fundamentals that we would want to achieve. We'd want to achieve a much fairer taxation and spending system. We'd want to achieve real climate action. We'd want to achieve a transformation of our political system, proportional representation, so that everybody's voice is heard in politics, and so that we build that much better political system so that going forward we have to work together rather than the polarized system that is currently open to exploitation by reform. 60% of people in the British Social Attitude Survey this week said they support PR.
Zach.
We've got to get that.
Winning MPs is important, but it's not the only important thing. And this isn't like some imaginary thing. The Lib Dems have won 72 MPs. But what was Ed Davey doing on the first day of Parliament? He was kicking a football, offering a FIFA challenge to Keir Starmer. We need a coherent narrative that happens right now. So when this situation happens, it's very clear who we are and what we stand for. Just last week, I was in Brussels. I go once a year to the Green Leadership Congress. This is where a member of the leadership team from every single country in Europe comes together to discuss the situation. And it's happening right across Europe. The far right are on the rise. This Labour government is going to collapse. They're already collapsing. So the question is, are they going to be more scared of losing votes and seats to the Reform Party, or are they going to be more scared of the Green Party? We need to be influencing things right now. So when it comes to negotiations, we're clear. It's a wealth tax, it's proportional representation, and it's action on nature and climate.
And where will you be after the next general election? Which was his question.
After the next
Very
general
briefly.
election, I want to be where Reform are right now, where are people saying, is your party ready for a Green government? That seems a long way, but Reform have shown how quickly you can do it with bold communications, with a strong message.
Oh, no.
How quickly you can do it with a TV channel in your pocket with billionaire dodgy money behind you,
Well, let's get
and
TV
with not
channels.
being bothered at all about telling outright lies. The thing is, we can't outshout Reform. We can't emulate their playbook because we are not prepared to tell those sorts of lies. We have to dig into our authentic
go on, yeah.
selves and how we know
I've
how
got
to win
questions
elections.
in the audience. Zach wants to respond.
Nigel Farage
The
plays-
Farage of the Green Party.
Farage plays politics on easy mode. He can tell lies and misinformation,
That's easy.
but tell a powerful emotive story. Nothing is more powerful than an emotive story. In the Green Party, we will never tell those lies. We will never tell those misinformation. But what we do far too often is focus on the policy and on the detail. We need to focus on the policy and detail, but then we need to get out there and tell a powerful story about changing this country forever.
Okay, we've got a question there. Woman with the black face.
I'll keep it brief.
Oh. I was teasing him. I was teasing him. Okay, sorry, Zach. I apologise. He isn't the Farage of the Green Party.
I'll keep it brief. I'm not sure that it can be answered in 2 minutes, but as leader of the Green Party, what would you do to
keep the question really focused.
As leader of the Green Party, what would you do to end British complicity in the genocide in Gaza?
Don't you go first?
I just missed the question.
What would you do to end the genocide in Gaza?
Oh, absolutely. I would say we are not just complicit, we are active participants. We've been selling arms to Israel, we've been sharing intelligence, and again, when America started to bomb Iran, Keir Starmer should have been out front and centre condemning that. Instead, he was giving implicit coded agreements. Tony Brennan, former director of the CIA, not a friend of the pro-peace movement, said that Iran is nowhere near having nuclear weapons and are not an imminent threat to anybody. In this country, we need to be really clear that we stand with the pro-peace movement, we are anti-war, and say very loudly and clearly, no more war.
That's exactly what I've been doing week in, week out in Parliament for the past year. Just last week, I led a debate in Parliament on British complicity in genocide in Gaza, putting the minister on the spot about whether a risk assessment has been done and our obligations under the Genocide Convention. You asked how we would do it. I agree with Zach. We've got to call it out. This is how we do it. We use every lever available to us. Just the week before, when the sanctions were announced against Smotrich and Ben Gvir, I made the point, what about settlement goods? These are proceeds of crime. Why are we allowing them still into our country? When in September, a few arms licenses were suspended, again, I was there putting the minister on the spot. Why not suspend all arms licenses? I'm a co-signatory of Jeremy Corbyn's private members bill to call for a public inquiry into British complicity, both in selling arms and in allowing use of our airbase in Cyprus. There are so many things we can and must be doing, and I've been doing all of them. Sometimes politics is a flipping long marathon, but it's so important to have those green voices there in Parliament, outside. I also took part in the Red Line demonstration outside Parliament a couple of weeks ago. The combination of activism and parliamentary representation is how we put pressure on government to stop that outrageous complicity.
So we've been given special permission by Shane, who runs the tent with Bex. We got special permission because there's a big audience. It's going very well. One more question. Who's it going to be?
You talk about system change. Can we name it and talk about capitalism and actually say, like, we need a radical government to take the fight to reform, who are incredibly radical, right? So can we have some radical policies that name capitalism and actually do that political analysis of what's driving the destruction of our only home?
Okay. So you go first on this, because I think Zach has made his position quite clear on this. So you talk about capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The system is causing the destruction, not just environmental and social. It is the capitalist system. And the way that we tackle the threat of the rise of reform, I think, is not just by saying capitalism is the problem, because many people get turned off by that. That's the reality of campaigning at grassroots level. What we have to do is point out how people's lives are being affected by that, how they're being exploited, how the bills that are what they're worrying about day to day are due not to eco policies, but actually to the huge billions of profits that are being made by the fossil fuel companies. We need to call out the system, and that is why I'm in politics, because that's what government can do. I've come from an activist background, and I got involved in politics because it gave me the opportunity to have conversations that all of my campaigning and demonstrating didn't enable me to have. It enabled me to knock on people's doors and connect with the things that they were concerned about and find that common ground. And that's how we win power, through inclusion and through listening to people. Polarizing language can help with some people, but not with all.
Okay.
I've chaired London's Environment Committee for the last few years, so I've seen repeated evidence of the destruction that capitalism is doing both to nature and to our environment more generally. What I would say, though, is I don't think any of these things are radical. I think what's going on right now in the country is radical, where poor people have got poorer than they've ever been before, while the rich have continued to get richer. I think when our NHS is crumbling and there aren't enough spaces in prison, I think all of these things are radical. So when I've knocked on thousands, if not tens of thousands of doors in the last few years, I know that people are at the same place that most of us are. People are wanting change. They recognize that the system is fundamentally broken. What they're not seeing is a political party who are very willing to do what needs to be done. And don't take my word for it, Zoran in New York just this week won the primary by being very clear that he wanted socialism, that he wanted to take the fight to the far right, and he wanted to ultimately represent the communities that needed to be as vibrant and diverse as all the people that we seek to represent. I think the Green Party can be that vehicle in England and Wales.
And I'm just saying it's going to be really annoying. I'm going to ask you 30 seconds each just to make your final pitch to this large audience we've got now. 30 seconds each, all right?
Okay.
You go first, Ellie.
We've got a huge opportunity in the Green Party. We've been more successful than we have ever been. We know how to win elections, and that is our contribution to the Green movement, winning elections. We take activism into the halls of power, whether that's council chambers or Westminster. We connect with those voices of frustration and change, and we have that opportunity to make that change happen in practical ways. We're the trusted insurgents in politics, the complete opposite to reform. We can't outshout them, but we can outshine them by being true to ourselves, building on how we have won before, and building up transformationally.
Zack, 30 seconds.
I'm genuinely so proud of the Green Party and all the progress and success we have made over the last few years. And I've been proud to be a vital part of that success, but I'm proud of every single one of you who has leafleted, knocked on a door, supported a candidate, or just reposted something on social media. We also know that the country is crying out for the Green Party to seize this moment. We have a nature and climate crisis. We had those racist riots on our streets last summer, and we have deepening inequality like we have never seen before in this country. It is not the moment for slow and incremental change. It is not the moment to just focus on Westminster and MPs. It is the moment to be out in our communities, to be with the trade unions, to be organising, to be raising our voices, to be out on media, to be bold and clear, to be saying it is now, before July 31st, this is the moment. Join the Green Party.
So, if you want to continue the conversation, you guys will be in the audience, so they'll come out to you and you can talk to them now. But thank you very much indeed for being a fantastic audience. Sorry we couldn't come to all your questions. Thank you.
So just to finish up, I want to do a quick straw poll. Hands up who is currently a member of the Green Party here. Hands up who, after this hustings, this talk, is considering joining the Green Party. Job done. I just want to say on behalf of a few of us who've been members of the Green Party.
As a BBC journalist, I can't endorse that.
Of course you can't. Who've been a member of the Green Party since the late 80s. I've been a councillor for 10 years. It is really, really exciting at the moment to see the quality of candidates we've got for the leadership hustings. So, as was said, you have till the 31st of July to join, and your vote can be heard not only in the leadership hustings, but at conference, because that's how we build policies from members upwards. So, I want a big cheer, first of all, for Justin from the BBC. He's been with us for many years. You know, if ever a horse was shackled, here's one. We're very grateful indeed. And a big hand, please, for Ellie Chown. And a big hand, please, for Zack Polanski. And last but not least, the people who actually make this happen. You would have seen a few signs around saying thank you to the crew who makes this happen. But I particularly want to thank Ruth, John Carrington and John Moore for the sound and vision, and there's and Steve as well. Thank you.